Hey, welcome to another episode of the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Today we are joined by Stacey Forman, who is a project group lead for the Nuivas group. I'll let her give her introductions in a second, but Andrew, how's it going?
All good. So another day, another episode. Just obviously trying to get as many guests on as we possibly can and share wonderful stories.
Yeah, we've got a busy summer. We're just at the back end of like the summer heat wave in the UK, where it was crazy hot, 41 degrees, 42 degrees. It was in my car said it was absolutely mad. But it's kind of overcast day and a little bit cold-ish, so not too bad. When I say cold, it's probably just like normal, but for us now, we're climatized to this wonderful tropical heat. It is cold. So, as I said, we're joined by Stacey Forman today. Stacey, how you doing? You all right?
I'm great, thank you. How are you guys?
Great, all good. So, what we normally do with our guests, first of all, just give us a brief introduction yourself, kind of tell us who you are, what job you are, because I think I probably butchered your job title.
Yeah, not a problem at all. So I'm Stacey Forman. I'm the Group Project Portfolio and PMO Leader at Nuivas, who are a specialist IT distributor. I am a speaker, a women's rights activist, a PPM professional, and I'm a very passionate advocate for women working in technology, hence my interest in this podcast. So it's great to meet you guys.
Awesome. So what's a PPM professional?
PPM, so it's basically it's anything to do with projects, particularly IT projects. So at the moment, I currently run a department within Nuivas, which not only manages the portfolio, so the IT portfolio of the group, but also manages project managers. I'm responsible for creating training around projects because the organisation is trying to mature its environment for PPM, so for portfolio and project management, which is what it stands for, and basically to bring together a whole picture of how to manage IT projects. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Awesome. So very much starting at the very beginning. So you can see that you've been in IT for over 10 years now. So
yeah,
where did you kind of start, obviously, then to get into the world of women in tech?
Yeah, I've not had the most simple trajectory to end up in this career, but I tend to find that most women haven't. My personal plan was not to be a woman in tech. I've wanted to be a number of things in my life, as I think most people have. And at the GCSE stage of life, I wanted to be a journalist. And at the end of the GCSE year, you had an opportunity to apply for work placements, and the spots on the local paper went to the academically bright kids, and I was never really like that, to be honest with you. And I ended up with my work placement being in a primary school, which was very different to what I'd requested, and it actually made me feel a little bit dejected. And I sort of lost the appetite for journalism after that. I didn't even end up going to university as an 18-year-old like my friends. I just sort of drifted in and out of part-time work. I did A-levels. And eventually I found what was called back then a new apprenticeship, doing admin work in the psychological services department of a prison. And luckily enough, I was taken under the wing of the senior psych there and decided that I wanted to become a counsellor. And I was very much on that track in 2001. We had a computer in the office. It wasn't networked. We had no IT department of which to speak. And as a result, I was the only person of the correct age in that department to understand even how to switch the machine on. And counselling is very gendered. All of the other employees were older ladies. There was an opportunity for the department I was working in to take part in a pilot delivery of a specific course. And there were requirements for a data feed to be put in, some audiovisual equipment to be put in. My boss at the time said, "You know about this computer stuff, don't you?" And never one to be put off. I said, "Kind of," and got stuck in and delivered what I realise now to be my first project. Mm-hmm. So as I moved along in my career and moved to different places, and as the world became ever more digital, I found that more of this this type of at the side of my desk project work, IT project work, was required of me. So in the next job, for example, I had to throw up a website. And then the one after that one, I did a first to market mobile app, until eventually I'd sort of looked at myself and thought, actually, I'm a project manager. And I made an active decision to take the industry standard qualifications, to upskill myself and market myself as such. And that's when my personal career trajectory started to rise. And the more that happened, I started to notice the less women were in the room around me. And that's when my interest in women in tech really began. And I wanted to be able to send the lift back down for other women. So it's not necessarily the most straightforward technological career as such, but I think I tend to find that a lot of people do fall into tech this way.
Yeah, as I've said many times on the podcast, me and Andrew both work in for a consultancy department within CW and Fujitsu respectively, and like I've got no women in my department at all. I don't think in the whole consultancy, but then it is about. I've seen no job descriptions. I mean, I basically do like the technical help with the technical hire into the team, and I've never seen a CV from a female, which is mad. It's just always men all the time. But saying that, in the program management and project management department, there's a I think probably more of a 50-50 split. Would you kind of see that in across the whole of the industry, or is it still, or is there a different ratio to that?
I think it depends on where you work. I think there is definitely more of an even sort of parity split as far as gender is concerned. But I think when it comes to senior leadership, I've probably only ever met one project director who's been a woman. And that's the thing for what I mean, basically, I think, is the more that my career has gone up and the more that I've been in charge of departments, a department head, the less women have been around me at that table, I think, is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, I definitely think that project management is seen as a good career for women. But it's that next step into executive senior leadership where I'm not necessarily seeing the balance. So that's really strange. That is my experience.
Yeah, I mean, characteristically, I think that women have so many more better characteristics for a project management role. That must be quite stereotypical, but I think for that role it's amazing, especially like the leadership as well. So I'm really surprised with that.
Like I say, in actual project delivery, 100% it's much better balanced in a lot. The more technical the role, I've found, because obviously in IT leadership you get an oversight and a helicopter view of all different departments. There's no doubt that there are more women in project management than there are, for example, in a server team or in an app development team. 100%. There's definitely more visibility and parity. But again, it's that exec leadership that I'm not necessarily seeing the presence of.
So what type of stuff do you think what work have you done like within the community, and you said you're a women's rights activist, kind of what have been your first step to kind of try to like combat that and start to kind of dive into that subject?
Yeah, the thing that I really see a lot of, because I try and I think people can be really emotional about gender. I think they can look at the sort of situation around them and think that that's representative of the whole industry. Whereas what I try to do is keep my opinions based in stats, in actual figures that we can look back on. And it's okay to feel emotional about things, I think, absolutely. But it probably feels better to me to be able to fall back on some statistics. And one of the things that sticks out to me every single time is the fact that women and girls aren't really taking up IT education, formal education. So there's a great campaign from the Women in Science and Engineering. So it's called the WISE campaign. if I can use an example, a non-IT example, 93% of all entrants to a health and social care A level is girls. So that's a very gendered area for women to work in, to go towards. Computing has the starkest gender disparity at the other end, and 80% of entrants there are boys. So there's a question really around why women aren't taking up a career that I think is as flexible, as creative, as exciting. And it's quite, I find that technology is quite a sexy career to work in. Do you know what I mean? There's constant change. I think it would be really great for women, but the key thing is women and girls are just not taking that up at all. It is a growing subject, and the number of girls being awarded A levels in it has increased by 22% over the past 4 years, which is encouraging. But girls still only represent 14% of the total computing A level entries, despite continued high demand for skills in that sector. So I think that's a big question for me. Why aren't women and girls taking up that formal education in the first place? I don't know if that's something that you guys have encountered as well.
Yeah, it's something we hear quite a bit, to be fair, especially people who've gone through like yourself that are speaking about subjects like this. But in terms of like the interest and stuff, I'm playing devil's advocate here. What about if there just isn't the interest there from women to get into IT? I know there will be, there is, but like, what about if there just isn't that interest?
I think I would like to know why there isn't that interest,
Yeah.
I suppose would be the question. If I reflect back on the kind of careers advice that I received, so we spoke earlier a little bit about the fact that I didn't actually have the engagement from the careers team to get me into a position of a work placement that I wanted to do. I do have to question whether women and girls are being given the same types of careers advice at that early stage. Now, I can't say for absolute certainty that is not happening, but what I would suggest is maybe there could be some investigation into how women and girls differ in being offered careers, because it feels like there's a massive disparity between those two courses in which I told you about. And I know that pay, for example, isn't the kind of thing that everybody would necessarily sort of focus on, but I do think that there's no real drive for women at a young age to be sort of shuffled into that as a career. You don't see anything public, do you? Sort of like, oh, perhaps this is a ready pool of people that we can nudge in the direction of skills that we actually need as a country. We don't see anything like that driven by the government, driven by schools or local communities or anything like that. So the fact that people aren't just, sort of drifting into careers is a concern for me. It's because these are skills that we actually need in our country. So yeah, I suppose that would be my question back.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I'm just playing devil's advocate, asking the question as we're here to do. Like,
no, completely.
But so, like, I never got careers advice when I was in school. Like, I never had a careers advisor or anything like that. I just kind of knew from a young age that I wanted to work in IT because I like playing on the PlayStation and the Sega Mega Drive and Nintendo SNES, and that's how old I am. But
playing Doom on Windows 95. There you go. That's another good one.
But that's kind of always knew I wanted to go down the IT route, but you never know what. Like in terms of people say, what do you want to do? I don't know. I want to work in IT, but what is it? And I think that's something that I think a lot of companies and the industry needs to shout a lot more about. It's kind of like, this is the IT industry, but these are like the amount of jobs that we can do that are in the industry. So it's not just a techie anymore, like sitting there writing code. It's project management, it's account management, it's everything else along it, co-worker services, HR, everything kind of it's its own beast, the IT industry. And no matter kind of what careers advice that I got when I didn't get, as I said, I didn't get careers advice, it was just kind of go into it and you kind of find your way your way into it. And I just think that opportunities just need to be there for everybody. You might not have the interest if you're male or female, but like I think having a good pathway in is the most important.
I think there's a cultural element as well. It's like, could either of you name a woman in a fictitious, like in a soap or in a show or anything like that, who's a technical woman? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like there are too many role models like that out there.
Yeah, I mean, the only role models I could kind of probably say that we have is just people that we know because we were in the Microsoft community. Or we've so you've got names like Donna Sakar, Holly Lehman, all these like people that are really quite famous within the industry or within, but outside, no. Like you think of Big Bang Theory, all the sciencey technical guys are male, and then actually no, that's not true.
I've got one as well. I've just literally just thought one in Fast and Furious. I can't remember her name. It's the
can't even remember her name.
The girl was in Hollyoaks. Isn't she like an IT tech?
I know.
They're trying to track it down. So there is one. There we go.
No. I mean, they do exist, absolutely. But I think the thing that I'm referring to is there's PwC research.
Not many at all. I mean, I was actually sitting there racking my brain, going, "Come on, there must be one that I know of."
I'm happy to put a couple forward actually, but there's actual existing research by PwC, and it shows that 78% of students, that's all students, not women, can't name a famous woman working in technology, and that is inclusive of fictitious characters. Because for me, whenever I think about cool women working in technology in sort of your cultural things, I think about Elizabeth Salander in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. I don't know if you've seen that, but she's a hacker. She's famously been portrayed by 3 women so far, so a bit James Bondish, do you know what I mean? And she's got a mohawk and she's got tattoos and she's very, very cool. So for me, that's one that I always try and bring up because I think that she's just an incredible character. But also, I don't know if you are into Marvel or anything like that, but there's a character played by Kat Dennings in WandaVision called Darcy Lewis, who's also more of a techie. Yeah, so there are some do exist, but realistically, unless you're already in those universes or multiverses, then actually you're not massively exposed to women doing those types of jobs. So culturally, there's a problem too, I would suggest, because you can't. There's a saying, you can't be what you can't see, and I would disagree with that. There are women all over the world who have just knocked down walls and glass ceilings and all that kind of stuff through the sheer strength of their own personality. I couldn't do that. That's not who I am. I need people, role models, to be able to look up to and see them doing the jobs, the senior exec jobs, and think, oh, actually I could do that. And I think for me, I would say it's hard to be what you cannot see. And this is what I am trying to do by being visible, trying to let people know that actually you can do it. You can sit at that top table. You can take jobs that you think are difficult. Obviously Sheryl Sandberg famously wrote her book Lean In about jumping for opportunities and leaning in, because I think she says in her book women are less likely to take jobs that they don't think that they're ready for. Whereas men nearly always will sort of apply for jobs if they meet a certain amount of the criteria. I think it was a Hewlett-Packard piece of research that basically said unless women meet 100% of the criteria, they won't even apply for the role. So yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, that's something we definitely spoke about in the past with Ellie King and a few other people. It's obviously when it comes to job descriptions, certain wording in that job description, say like rock star, a woman in tech is going to basically walk away from that because they don't represent themselves against that particular word. It's a big struggle. I mean, circling back a little bit, I'm just talking about obviously schools and career fairs and stuff. I mean, I was lucky enough to go to a school career fair because my daughter was looking at setting her GCSEs for the coming year, and I was looking around. all the different stands. I mean, there's like some for like the army and like social care, and there wasn't many for just IT, even for like just for boys as well. So I'm thinking, there should be more from even just local companies that are doing apprenticeships in IT, or doing graduate schemes that should get more involved in local schools. That way, then you can get that early door into any girl that wants to get into IT. Well, it is a cool thing to do, because you could have women from your organisation attending and going, this is what I do as a woman in tech. Because I've spoken on this podcast so many times, so many different roles in a technical company, that you don't have to be a technical person to become a woman in tech.
Do you know what? Something on that as well. Next month, I'm not doing a work experience, but there will be work experience at CDW, and I'll be helping run that work experience. So we've got, I think, 6 or 8 children coming in, and I'm really interested to see kind of what the split is going to be for that. But I'm going to be teaching the AI 900 course to them, and getting them to do some artificial intelligence stuff. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm really interested to see what that split is, and it's really nice that CDW doing that. I think next year is going to be even bigger, and to try to get some more kind of like more people in for work experience, see what it's like working at a tech company and that. But yeah, saying I'm really, really interested on what that split will be.
I think that's so interesting, because I think, how old will they be?
16, 17.
Okay. Because for me, I think we kind of need to, I think that's absolutely brilliant. And I really hope that there's a good gender split on there, because I think it's normal to learn together. I don't think we should be necessarily separating out genders and sort of trying to specifically target. But one of the things, I actually set up a Women in Tech network at the University of Leeds. So I'm working at Nuivas at the moment, but my background is overwhelmingly public sector. And I worked for the University of Leeds in charge of their projects department for a very long time. And one of the things that I set up was a Women in Tech network, just to get us as ladies together and have male allies there who were interested in helping support us and talk about some of the issues that we faced. And it was a good project. But one of the hopes that I had, which was kiboshed by COVID, was that hopefully we might be able to get in and see some younger children, get them fairly early, and maybe do some kind of escape room, for example, whereby you have to learn a line of code, you have to understand maybe a really basic architectural document, do a bit of project management, etc., to show them the breadth of roles within IT and the type of things that matter. The fact that nearly every organisation will have an IT department, and it could be as creative as you want it to be. You could work for Disney, for example, if you wanted to, in their technological departments, and try and burst open the idea that it's just for one specific type of person in one specific type of company. But I left before we got an opportunity to do something like that. But I would still really like to create something that allows them to learn at an early age that tech is not scary, is not gendered, and actually can be one of the most, if you think about development, for example, it's one of the most creative things I think you can do. So yeah, I think there are some myths to bust around technology as a career, not just for girls, but for everybody involved in education, I'd say.
Yeah, I think kind of the ally piece is quite important as well. I mean, I hate the word myself. Like, I've got rid. Like when people go, "Oh, you're an ally," and I go, "No, I'm just doing doing kind of what's right, like what you're meant to do. Really, just talking and engaging and bringing everyone in. If it's male, female. So yeah, I personally don't like being referenced it, like because I just feel like it's just what's normal. Like I don't like.
Well, it should be normalised. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but yeah. But the question I have for you, and I don't know how long this is, and if you was to create a playbook for getting women into IT, what would it look like?
Wow, that is a big question.
That's a brilliant question, John. Did you Google that, John? Because that's
I'll be thinking about it for 5 minutes. I'm just putting it into the right section.
You see, the thing is, I don't even know if I'm the right person to come up with the playbook. Do you know what I mean? For me, a lot of, I would need to do some more research, because some of my assumptions are merely that, assumptions that actually girls aren't taking up IT spaces in education because they're not being pointed in the right direction. But I honestly think, as a species, that I don't think that we're so different as men and women, that we are going in completely different directions. I honestly think that if there was a decent careers service, or if maybe IT companies were interested in recruiting girls from maybe their, sort of their degree onwards or something like that, that perhaps there would be more parity in the industry. So I would definitely look at, looking at the education piece for a start. I think it's, how do we actually create more space for women to enter technological training and technological jobs? Role modeling, as we've already mentioned, I think is incredibly important. So how do we create the cultural space for women in tech to appear an appealing job? We're about to talk about male allies, and I know you said you don't really like that that term, but I think men do need to use their influence and their knowledge and their resources to support folks who identify as women, people of colour, anyone from marginalised communities. It's important to try and make sure that everyone is invited to the table, and when they're at that table, that their contributions are acknowledged too, because sometimes you can get to the table and everything that you say is sort of shoved off to one side as well. So I think men definitely have their part to play, to be able to perceive inequality. And I think we need to somehow make sure that women continue to be competitive when it comes to promotions, when it comes to that leaning in aspect. I don't know. I think it would probably take a reflector like me probably more time to consider what a true playbook would look like. But they're the places that I feel are most important.
Yeah. I don't think there's one answer to it, and that's
no,
the thing.
there isn't.
You're saying there's, yeah. I mean, I don't think any one person would ever be qualified to do that. It is about getting ideas together and running through them, and do a
education
project.
Probably a big thing. I mean,
execution.
I was looking at Rare Games. Obviously, they're part of Microsoft, and they recently held a Women in Tech event. So the post on LinkedIn, the post up there, and then I was actually then looking at some of the comments of that. And obviously, there's other women that say, "No, this is amazing. I hope to see more of this." And I saw one comment from a guy, "Why are men excluded from such events to show talented women are in the industry?" I was like, "Well, clearly you're not educated enough to know that most women in tech events, are inclusive of men as well." Everyone that I've ever seen advertised does not basically solely state you must be a female to attend. So it's just education is definitely a big thing, and yes, obviously women in tech allies are required. We don't always have to use that particular wording, but that they are definitely required, whether that is you are a female supporting more women, or you're a male supporting more women, or if you're from a diverse background. There needs to be more people out there educating those who do not understand the terminology around women in tech.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's loads of research done by PwC, and they say that 3% of women say that a career in technology is their first choice. That's underrepresentative. That's not okay, I don't think. And only 16% of women have had career in technology suggested to them, as opposed to 33% of men. And it's that 47% of women eventually leave the industry for good. For whatever reason that might be. It could be stuff to do with childcare, whatever it is. But that's all of these seem extreme to me as far as research is concerned, as far as figures are concerned. And every time I go to Women in Tech events, so I went to one where I live in West Yorkshire recently, and I was doing the scary networking part. And I spoke to a number of fantastic women, so testers, application support types, developers, marketeers. And the main takeaway I had from that event was how many women tried to separate themselves between their career choices and their training. So they'd often say, I'm not actually a real techie. I just write scripts, or I didn't start out in tech. I fell into it after university, or I'm not really technical. I work in sales. But I asked them to ask themselves, if you couldn't familiarize yourself with a stack, how could you sell it? If you don't understand how the system works, how could you write test plans for it? If you didn't understand the industry itself, how could you make it appealing to others and market it? And every woman's journey is different, but it feels to me like a lot of women fell into tech after university. Why not, if if you've got an interest in it and you have the capacity to understand it and do all of these things, why didn't they access the opportunity in the first place via the prescribed route? And then they could have been trained at the point of access in the tech field. So what they may have done is completed what is likely a very enjoyable but very expensive philosophy or drama degree or geography or whatever that they won't use in the future to any great effect. But a proportion of these women might have wished in hindsight that they came into the tech world via a tech pathway. So, it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, it's just creating them opportunities. I say it starts at school, it starts basically seeing people that it can represent against in all walks of life. In a film, for example, or a TV series, women need to be able to see someone they can represent against. And that's why I've said many times over, and we've had quite a few guests on from Microsoft, that if you look at Ignite as one of their biggest event, you've had the likes of Karuna Gatamu, you've had the likes of Anne Michaels, all up on stage delivering keynote sessions, because they are women from obviously two different backgrounds. Obviously, Karuna's Black American, Anna's originally from Germany. They're completely different, but having them two women up there doing speeches, talking about the actual technology and actually getting technical as well about parts of it, shows that it is achievable for anyone from all walks of life.
Absolutely. And it's accessible. It's a great sort of accessible career for me, I think, because I tend to find that tech companies are forward thinking and they have, sort of shared parental policies. And, I just think it is such a great career, and it maybe isn't being presented or sold in the best way that it could, possibly because of intimidation from the career sector itself. Perhaps it doesn't understand the sector as well as it maybe thinks it does, because it moves at such a great pace. Perhaps there's not the understanding of the multitude of roles that we've already spoken about. I don't know. That's conjecture on my part, but I would love to see some digging in there to understand it. And I think positive role models are really important as well. Did either of you watch the Disney show recently about Elizabeth Holmes called The Dropout?
No.
Are you familiar with the story? Do you want me to just nutshell it very quickly?
No,
Go on, nutshell it.
So Elizabeth Holmes was part of a company called Theranos, who were a trailblazing health technology company. She created a device called Edison, which was supposed to be engineered for very small amounts of blood to test a multitude of health issues. And she designed herself very much as a woman Steve Jobs. So she was all turtleneck sweaters, and she called this Edison machine the iPod of healthcare. As it turns out, Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes herself exaggerated the claims of the success of the project. She attracted venture capitalists and private investors worth more than 700 million, I think. So that impacted the company's valuation, which reached, I think, about 10 billion at its peak. The veracity of the Theranos claims came under question. The company was exposed in 2015 as a big fat fake, and Elizabeth Holmes was charged with 11 counts of fraud. The book Bad Blood is a brilliant read if you've not read it, and goes through the full downfall of the company. So she was one of the only tech CEO women that I'm aware of. And the reason that I'm raising it is people might have seen that show, and that's the impact, the sort of visual that they have of a woman in tech. But her infamy has absolutely devastated women entrepreneurs in the US. Women entrepreneurs are frequently asked to talk about Theranos, even though it's not in their particular industry. One woman was asked to dye their hair a different colour to limit comparisons to Elizabeth Holmes. And women are just not being offered the big Silicon Valley venture capital that they might have been had this not happened.
What's that program called? Sorry.
It's called The Dropout. It's really excellent. I really enjoyed it, and the book Bad Blood is even better because it's a true crime book, but it's written like a thriller. It's fantastic. So people aren't talking about like Jacqueline de Rojas, for example. They're not talking about Marissa Mayer or Sheryl Sandberg or Sue Black. People are talking about Elizabeth Holmes, and it's really important that we try and get more in the cultural space, more positive female CEOs, because I would say I'm probably more inspired by women from different industries than I am from the tech industry. But yeah, that's another thing. The role models that we get in place need to be really positive, I think.
Yeah, I'll put it on my watch list, by the way.
Great, fantastic. Let me know how you get on. I hope you like it.
Amanda Seyfried is a good actress as well. So the Amanda Seyfried is the actress, isn't it? And she's a good actress. So
she is fantastic in it. She practically becomes this lady because she in the course of her career she learns to speak with a very deep voice. And if you see any interviews with Elizabeth Holmes, she's at such a low register in order to be commanding. Very interesting character.
It's like, is it similar type? I know it's gonna be quite different, but what's that one with the German heiress on Netflix?
Oh yeah, it is a bit like that. Yeah, Netflix have gone sort
Anna
of
Delvey,
has gone sort of fraud mad, hasn't it? Because they had the Tinder swindler and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was it is a bit like that, to be honest with you. But
what's the name? The name is what's it? Anna Delvey, and what's the program called?
It's called My Friend Anna, I think.
There, John's out looking for it.
Yeah, I'm looking now.
Oh, I think that might be the book actually, because I read the book.
Yeah, I think that's the book name. It's something.
So
is it
while John's obviously having a little nose. So with obviously women in tech events in the UK, do you think there should be more of them? Because I mean, obviously I work for a big organisation, Fujitsu, and I was on a call just this week actually about women in tech and becoming like a Women Business Network champion, which is like an internal name they use. And we're obviously looking at ways, obviously, of trying to advertise more of all the things that are going on. I would like to try and find that, that single source where all the different women in tech events are all basically hosted. So it's easier to, if I want to go and attend something and learn a little bit more about it, then there is that ability. And I don't think there is in the UK at all. And that's something that, I think should be looked at, and maybe someone out there who maybe listens to this podcast goes and does it for us. But I think
inventing Anna.
Oh, brilliant.
But yeah, I think, I think there needs to be probably more women in tech events. It needs to be advertised a lot better for many different reasons. So it's more in people's minds of, I should go and attend and be supportive, or I should look at it at least and understand, what's actually going on in that space.
I think it's a bad idea at all. I think the women, those events are for support to women. They are for hopefully promotion for women. One of the things that I would like to see is how we could maybe leverage those events to invite people who are not already in the industry into them. I think it's worth considering. What's the purpose of the event itself? What are the outcomes of those events? And how do we actually get people, women, non-binary people, people of colour, interested in attending these events as an industry for them, I suppose would be my concern, because I think the key thing is to broaden the playground for everybody, isn't it? And if we can actually make these events, yes, for women in tech, but also for potential women in tech, I think we might be onto a winner.
Yeah. My mind's firing now. I've got ideas to try and do something different.
I love that for you, Andrew.
It's bad. It's always bad. It always ends up bad for me because I end up like taking out my life.
Taking all the work.
But now, I mean, yeah, there's so much more we can do. So I'd love to be able to attend more women in tech events, but I just don't know when they're advertised or when they're happening.
I mean, a central resource is never, a resource repository is never a bad idea, I don't think. I almost think it's advertising the things that are on within your own organisation, isn't it? Making sure you're keeping that information updated and making sure that other people feel like it's a good use of their time to keep it that way. So, yeah. Good thinking.
And someone that you do know from the Women in Tech events is Sophie Dimolo, who's obviously one of our co-podcast people, co-hosts, that's the word, yeah. But again, someone who's doing really well within the IT industry, and yeah, she does bits with us, and and she said you both said that you know each other, so.
Yeah, I love Sophie. I am very my role models, because I would definitely refer to Sophie as a role model, are very much women like me from working class backgrounds who probably are surprised to find ourselves in technological jobs. And she really is a force for good as far as the women in tech environment is. And every time I see her at an event, it is always an absolute joy. She's great at what she does.
She's full of beans, definitely.
She is absolutely full of beans. That's a good description.
She's been crazy busy at the moment with her new job. She's here, there, and everywhere by the looks of social media.
She's really good at that as well, isn't she? She's really good at keeping us up to date with what she's doing. I am less good at that.
Yeah, she's unbelievable at social media.
So we spoke about obviously your past, your present. What's the future hold for Stacey?
I am not too sure, at the moment. I've been with Nuivas now since March, and they're very open to different ideas around the women in tech agenda. So we are starting to look at how we move forward. We're thinking mentoring. I think at the moment we're thinking that probably there's space to mentor, not just women, but there's a feeling at the moment that actually if you wanted a mentor, if you wanted to reach out for a mentor, there's some really obvious women in tech schemes. So for example, the Reading Partnership have a women in technology mentoring scheme of which I am a member. And that's a really good place if you're a woman, but actually if you're whoever you are, if you're non-binary, if you're a man, if whatever you identify as, it can be really hard to get started in that mentoring space and hard to know where to start looking for that kind of support to move you to the next level. So we recently held an event at Nuivas on Girls in ICT Day, which is a United Nations event, and started to think about what would mentoring and a mentoring scheme that is universal look like. So yeah, I think that's probably going to be my next focus. How do we actually get some universal support for people who want to increase their skills, move into maybe a technological role? Yeah, so that's the thing that I think we would like to be able to achieve in the channel, because we don't necessarily want to do it as just a Nuivas thing. The event we had included people from Juniper Networking and Clarinet, and Sophie was a part of that. So actually, it would be a broad in the distribution channel type initiative, if you like. So that's the next thing, to the very early stages in the infancy of discussion, but that's something that we're very interested in putting in place.
Awesome. So John, I think we're very much close to our normal run time. So Stacey, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing us your career history and your thoughts about women in tech. It's been massively appreciated.
No problem at all.
Another cool story. I like these podcasts generally because you get to know so many different people, and every story is completely different, and we have different discussions every time, which is amazing. And again, pleasure to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for talking to me.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Please make sure you hit that like, share and subscribe button to help us promote our message. You can also follow us on Twitter at MSFT Spotlight, and we're also on LinkedIn, the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. And finally, we'd like to tell you a little bit about BitTitan and thank them for sponsoring this podcast.
Remote migrations start here. Let MigrationWiz do the work for you. It's fast, secure, and 100% SaaS, which means you can migrate at any time and from anywhere. Migrate mailboxes, documents, public folders, personal archives, or even Microsoft Teams with just a few clicks. No special training needed and no customer downtime. When the work matters, choose MigrationWiz.